and restoration. Visit servpro.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka. Weekday afternoons at 3 on AM 560. The Answer.
Oh, I love this song.
I'm going to talk like your voice guy the rest of the morning. On AM 560. The Answer. The Answer.
All right, welcome back to the program. Amy Jacobson here. Ray Stevens in for Dan Proft while he's having a brocation. He does that a lot. He goes out with dudes and they go on golf trips and on fishing trips. What do you call that, Ray?
You know what you call that? You boys sure do go fishing a lot. I can't quit you, Dan.
All right. So
got a snork there. We got a snork, guys.
We have a bit of a problem. So last week, Pritzker had a press conference downtown, and I parked my car next to the Inn of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, yeah, I've seen, people talking about this where migrants are. There's about 1,500 families and single men that have been there. It's a block away from the Magnificent Mile.
Yeah.
3 meals a day. They have nice items donated to them. And there was some shady stuff going on. Even with a cop car right around the corner, parked in front of that Dunkin' Donuts, I saw people walking to a car, and they're looking around. It just felt, I'm intuitive, and I knew something bad was happening. Neighbors are getting a little sick of it. Here's one who lives next to the Inn of Chicago.
I can go to my 15th floor and hear noises starting from 7, 8, 9 p.m., nonstop for hours.
And the alderman of that ward wants to close the migrant shelter in Streeterville. And we welcome to the program because we have a lot to get to. Alderman Hopkins from the 2nd Ward. Good morning, Alderman. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Amy. Hi, Ray.
Hi.
So how do you go about the issue of closing the Inn of Chicago?
Well, I've let the mayor know that it's my desire, as well as my neighboring alderman, who actually has control of the site from the ward boundaries. It's not in my ward, but it's close enough to my ward. So there's really 2 of us that are directly affected by this, myself and Alderman Riley. And we both simply said, let this contract expire. It expires at the end of the year. Like any contract, it could be renewed, but we're under no obligation to renew it. And it's my view at this point that the shelter it doesn't function. It creates an adverse impact on the neighborhood, as you described from your eyewitness perspective, Amy. And nearly all of the immediate neighbors are saying the same thing. It's just an untenable situation. It doesn't work. It's too many people concentrated into too small of an area. We had a problem with crime in that area before. There was a narcotics hotspot that had been declared on the alley off of St. Clair, where a lot of drug activity was happening even before we started using this facility as a migrant shelter. So it's really just the perfect storm of conditions that are being created here, and we simply have to stop it.
Well, what kind of activity are they doing? And also, too, I heard that about more than 300 911 calls on the property have been made in the past 6 months. Is that true?
Actually, since the beginning of the year, since January 1st of 2023, we've had over 300 911 calls. And those are just calls from people who happen to observe a situation as you did, which was highly likely to be an illegal narcotics transaction that you saw, Amy. And we have a number of neighbors who, have a view of the corner. There's a couple of residential high-rises right there that have views of, the intersection of Ohio and St. Clair. And when they see a drug deal happening in the alley or even in some cases on the street, they call 911 and report it. So that's a data point for us to sort of track what's happening there. And it started out bad, and it's been getting worse. And my concern is on the trajectory that we're on. The shelter is about maxed out in terms of how many people that can fit there. But if we keep this up, it's attracting other sorts of criminal activity. We've had some arrests there, people engaged in criminal activity who are not migrants, and they're not residents of the shelter, but they're coming to this area because, it's like a shield. They know they can conduct their illegal activity behind the crowd of people on the street, and their chances of getting arrested are unfortunately slim.
Let me ask you this, Alderman Hopkins, 2nd Ward, our guest here on WIND AM 560. This is an issue with your party. I mean, J.B. Pritzker, the current mayor, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, everybody said, come to Chicago. We're a welcoming city. And then all of a sudden, buses started to come. How do you corroborate that with your party that is pretty much playing right into this? I mean, it starts at the top, and now it's here in Chicago. I get you want to fix it, but how is it tenable within your own party to say, okay, you can't come anymore, in's full?
It's not tenable, and I'm not going to defend it. It's indefensible. The evidence is before us. Neither party has a monopoly on bad decisions, all right? This was a bad decision by Democratic leadership in my party. I acknowledge that.
Okay.
When we started talking about, a sanctuary city and what a welcoming city means, I know for a fact, because I was involved in those debates, nobody predicted this. Nobody thought this was going to happen. I'm not sure it would have changed the outcome of the votes. I know I would have voted no on a welcoming city ordinance if I knew it would lead to this. This is unprecedented in our history. Nothing like this has ever happened. We had Ellis Island operating for 60 years, and it was about as smooth of a process as immigration could be. 15 million people came to America during that period of time. We didn't have computers. We didn't have technology. All we had is human beings with, pieces of paper and pens. And that system of immigration ran about 100 times better than this one. So there's no excuses here, and I'm not going to offer any.
Yeah, but so what are we going to do about it? What can you start?
Well,
can we get rid of the labor welcoming city? And then can we start with?
We have to control our borders. That's not something the city of Chicago is ever equipped to do. And using my Ellis Island example, the city and municipal government of New York and New Jersey had absolutely zero to do with immigration policy and migrant management during those years that it was in operation. The same thing applies now. The federal government has the sole responsibility for border management and immigration management, and they shirk their responsibility.
With all due respect, they wouldn't be shipped here if we were not a welcoming city. And that's the problem. We've got to get rid of that title. How do we go about doing that? I mean, if you want change, Alderman Beal wants change, Alderman Lopez wants change, Alderman Riley wants change, then change it.
So here's the short-term answer, and I think it's within reach. At least, there's a discussion happening right now among my aldermanic colleagues. There's a recognition that the first step, which is, immediate, we could declare a capacity limitation to our sanctuary city status. We could say, yeah, okay, we're a welcoming city, we're a sanctuary city, up until we get to 20,000, to just throw a number out there for the starting point. Beyond that, we simply can't take any more buses. We can't take any more asylum seekers of any status. We have to say that. For one thing, it's true. We right now we have a capacity, an identified inventory of about 10,000 shelter beds, and that's before any tents are built. But that's what we know we have right now. We have well over 15,000 that we've counted that are here. So by definition, we're over the capacity that we can safely handle, and yet we're not acknowledging that. That's wrong. I mean, there is a limitation on what even the most compassionate social service agency can handle, and we're at or beyond our capacity across the board. And this whole thing that's happening. So we need to start talking about that. We're putting a lot of pressure on this administration to acknowledge that and to try and establish it as a course of law. That would give us the legal authority to turn the buses away or direct them somewhere else, and who knows where else that's going to be.
All right. Well, so
right
Alderman,
now, nobody's stepping up to say, yeah, we want more buses to come to our location.
Well, Alderman Beal, I mean, I have to play this again because he's, obviously his ward is near Area 2, and they dropped off a busload of people, unbeknownst to him. And they dropped off mostly women and children, and that's where sex offenders have to check in once a week.
You have sex offenders coming in and out of this facility to check in, and you still have.
Appreciated the opportunity to interview him because we do have reports that the migrants walked into the lobby of Sears Tower and said, we were told this is our destination. Like they thought they were in the right place because the bus driver had told them that. So whether the bus driver took it upon himself to just, maybe he was trolling us, I think I'll drop them off at Sears Tower, and wouldn't that be funny? Or someone actually told the bus driver incorrectly that Sears Tower was, a welcoming building, and we could accommodate migrants in the lobby. We do know that a significant number of the buses that leave from places like El Paso or Las Cruces, they're not given specific addresses. The bus driver is told, okay, take these people to Chicago. Okay, so he jumps on the interstate system, drives to Chicago, gets here and realizes, they didn't tell me where in Chicago I'm supposed to take them. Chicago's a big city. Most of these drivers, they're professional bus drivers, so at some point in their career, they probably worked for Greyhound or Trailways or somebody like that. They all know where the Harrison Street bus terminal is, which is why they go there. They're familiar with it, and that's where they go typically to discharge passengers, absent any other specific directions. When that is full and all the bus bays are taken up, they start parking on the street. And when that doesn't look like an option, they literally just go anywhere and just say, okay, guys, your bus ride's over, get off the bus.
Well, we've had 14 buses in the past.
Seeing that happen, and
Okay.
that's how we found out about the Sears Tower situation. Building management called us. They called 911 and said, what's going on here? We got a bus of people that said they're supposed to be here, and they're not. Help us.
Well, how
So
long
the
did they
city
stay? Did they set up
dispatched, an
cots
intervention.
there? I'm sorry for interrupting, but did they set up cots, or how long did they stay there in the foyer of the Sears Tower?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of hours. The city assembled a pretty quick emergency response team and got over there and got them to other shelters. I'm not even sure where they took them, but I know, Sears Tower as a private entity had every right to say, we're just sorry, we're simply not going to let you camp in the lobby, so you have to leave. So the city responded pretty quickly and got them to other locations.
Hey, you come here, you get to go up that sky deck. It's fantastic. You get in, you get out. Let me ask you this, Alderman, here. Here we are. We're talking about all this, the minorities are here, no matter what you want to call them, migrants, asylum seekers, whatever. But it's taken the ball off the other situation we have here in Chicago, which is unbelievable crime, businesses leaving, restaurants closing. My goodness, we lost the Signature Room in the Hancock. I know that's in your
And the
ward.
Casimir Rug place
Yeah,
on LaSalle Street. It
Caspian
closed
Rug.
after 56 years, 52 years in business.
What it's still by and large a good city. I get it, but man, you've got to be worried about where we're heading here.
I am very worried about where we're heading. In fact, I just had a meeting with my business advisory council, and the chief attorney for the Signature Room happens to be on that council. And we got into a pretty in detailed discussion about the effects that the perception of crime and the reality of crime, had on their business. It definitely had an impact. It was absolutely a factor in their ultimate decision to close. Their sales were down significantly. They never recovered from the pandemic. When they reopened, they started to regain business, but never got to pre-pandemic levels, didn't even really get close. And they just couldn't do it anymore. So, and a couple of their staff had been mugged recently on the way to work. There's no denying it. It's the reality is right there before us. And every time I see someone tell me that it's not so bad because murder is down, you know what? It's not murder that is happening every day in my neighborhood. It's armed robbery. It's armed robbery sprees that are happening. And so if you tell me the murder rate is down, okay, that's good news. But that isn't an answer to the problem of increased armed robberies in a specific area of geography that's just being devastated by it. People are choosing to leave Chicago, and businesses are closing because of the fear of crime. And that is a problem that needs to be solved, or the city just it can't sustain itself. When the people who you want to live here choose not to live here, that's just a downward trajectory for a city, and
Right.
we seem to be on it right now.
Alderman, two more questions for you. Mayor Johnson asked of your alderman to find a space for one, possibly two tents. Have you located any space at all in your ward?
No, I did. I'm a team player, so I took his request seriously, and I made some calls around my ward. First of all, these things take up a minimum of 2 acres, and even that's kind of tight. So I represent a downtown ward that's highly concentrated. We don't have a lot of open space. I looked at the open space we did. I'm not going to mention the one that I got the farthest with because it's privately owned. but it possibly could have accommodated the smallest tent. And they ultimately said no. As private owners of the land, they considered it, and they said no, we're not going to let that happen.
That was near Northwestern.
I don't want to.
Right, Northwestern.
I don't want to
Hospital.
embarrass them by naming them, because then they'll be flamed on social media. But they considered the request, turned it down. I passed that on to the mayor's office. The tents also can be put on soft surfaces, but it's harder to do that, and it's actually more expensive. And there's all kinds of other things you have to do to secure them and make them safe if they're not on a paved surface. So a concrete or asphalt surface is really ideal. And I simply don't have it. I don't have any place in my ward that meets the criteria. And it isn't because I didn't look. I did, and all my colleagues to my knowledge, are doing the same thing. Everybody's trying to find locations for these things because, winter's coming. And
well, what about Northerly Island?
People dying of hypothermia this year if we don't get shelter for people.
What about Northerly Island? I heard that was a possibility.
Yeah, that's a big enough place, obviously. So I'm not sure if that's under consideration, but I know the Park District is very engaged in this conversation because we're seeing a lot more illegal encampments popping up on Park District land right now. So it's happening in the Park District, whether they want it to or not. So they're engaged in a conversation of trying to get a handle on it, seeing if there's some areas where they can make official designations for encampments and then try to get them out of the areas where they're not supposed to be.
I remember we set up this hospital, too, in a place called McCormick Place, but I don't want to go there.
I asked Governor Pritzker about that, and he said he doesn't want to affect the commerce that's coming in.
So, hey, I am a fan of what NASCAR put together in the city last year. I know that some people, Oh,
I hated it.
No, why? Why did you hate it?
Because it was a nuisance to try and get around the town.
There's a nuisance for the run that's in town this weekend, but nobody's complaining about it.
I complain about those, too.
Right, but
Wrigley Field 5K run,
But Alderman Hopkins, did this event make the downtown money? It was one of the most watched races for NASCAR, and I think given the fact that we had all that rain and they pulled the race off, I thought that they did a nice job. What do you think about it coming back for one more year? And then I hear it's over.
Actually, potentially 2 more years. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, the race itself was remarkable. I'm not a big NASCAR fan personally, but I watched that race, and it was great entertainment. Even someone who isn't a sophisticated racing fan like me, I could really see the skill of the drivers involved in that, navigating these tight turns, on this non-professional surface in the middle of a rainstorm with the pavement wet and spin outs all over the place. I mean, they needed their A-plus game. Every driver who completed that race, accomplished something. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of drama there. It was entertainment. I enjoyed watching it. And it did reflect very well on the city of Chicago. We got an international audience. And every time we do that, that always helps boost tourism. So there was some definite value there. However, and I'll say this, and I've been saying this since it happened, the NASCAR team who came to Chicago and under the cover of darkness in total secrecy, and that's, thank you, Lori Lightfoot, negotiated this deal with the city of Chicago. The NASCAR team went out when they signed the contract that night, and they had the biggest steak dinner and the champagne toast. They took us to the cleaners. This deal is so favorable to NASCAR. They make all the money, and we, as a city, get all the aggravation and the cost, by the way, the overtime for the police, the streets and sand department having to clean everything up. We're incurring the cost. And I'm not even sure we broke even last year. We got a boost in hotel stays and restaurant stays, but it wasn't nearly enough to justify a month of inconvenience and loss of the downtown park area, loss of Taste of Chicago, having to kick that out of its longtime home.
Yeah, I'm so over the Taste of Chicago.
We really incurred a lot of inconvenience so NASCAR could make a huge profit, which they really didn't share with us.
Well, somebody shook a hand on the deal. You can't blame them for that. It's we're a capitalist society. Thank you, Alderman.
Yes, thank you so much. Glad to have you on, and we'll have you back. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Amy. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Alderman Hopkins, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Hi, folks. Dennis Prager here. You've probably been hearing my colleagues and me talking about investing with Y-Refi for a while now. You may have some questions, so let's review. It's true. You can earn up to a 10.25% fixed rate of return that is not correlated to the stock market or the Fed. You